everybody and welcome back to another Formula 1 video here on the Traxion channel, and today I'm going to be talking about the 2022 Formula 1 season. Now first of all, I'm just going to do a race and briefly talk about some of my predictions for the upcoming season, about each of the teams, what I think is going to happen, some of the inter-team rivalries as well, and then towards the end of the video I'm going to share with you some specific predictions that I'm going to make along with some other members of the TraxionGG team. They're going to let you know what they think as well. We've got a lot to unpack in this video, so I'm going to get on with it. Let's jump into the race. So then, we're on the grid for the 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix. I am Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, and it's the 2021 Ferrari because, of course, the 2022 Formula 1 game is nowhere near out yet. I don't think it's even been announced yet. But either way, I'm going to try and fight my way through the field from the back of the grid and just chat about the upcoming season. So first of all, let's make sure we get off the line okay. 5 red lights. Out they go. Now Bahrain, I'm going to try and make as many positions as I can in the first corner. I really want to do a little bit better in terms of the driving than I did in the 2021 review video. So we're going to brake nice and late down the inside. Again, I've got damage turned off just because I know what these videos can end up being like in terms of contact. And my driving is... yeah, I need the damage off, let's put it that way. P14 coming out of the first corner. Going to try and take Vettel, we'll go to the outside, brake nice and late. Around the outside of Raikkonen as well while we're at it. Not quite. Okay, so let's start by talking about the front of the field, or at least what was the front of the field last season. Now, the first big point, of course, is that there are major regulation changes to the cars, which means that we will more than likely see a bit of a shuffle in terms of the pack order. We've seen it many times before when there's been big reg changes. It is definitely not a given that the teams that were at the top of the championship in the last few years will remain there, and also it's more than likely that you'll see one of the lower end teams making their way right to the front. Now Mercedes, I'm feeling fairly confident about Mercedes in all honesty. I think they stopped working on their 2020 and 2021 car a bit earlier than others, and they've put so much focus into the 2022 car. I honestly expect Mercedes to be right up there at the top again. They'll have learnt from previous times. If you put a bit of investment in and money in to your car, when there's a big regulation change, you do it as early as possible, you'll maximise your results. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Mercedes were staying right at the top. They just have that hugely professional ethos about them. In terms of the drivers, obviously we've got George Russell coming in. I don't think he's going to go and beat Lewis in the championship first time out, but he's definitely going to run him close and put the pressure on. Lewis Hamilton, if the Mercedes car is on form like I expect it to be, or I predict it'll be anyway, then I am expecting Lewis to take home a record 8th World Championship. I said that last season though. It's very much worth pointing out that this video has been recorded before pre-season testing, so we're making all of these predictions based on absolutely nothing other than a gut feeling, which, you know, is a bit dangerous when you're talking about regulation change, but it should be a bit of fun because I'm sure I will get some of these very wrong indeed, and that always makes it more interesting looking back in the future.
Caution, caution.
Oh, my teammate's binned it. Oh dear. Down the inside of Tsunoda is going to come back at me, but I'm going to brake nice and late, 100 board. Actually, I could push it a bit later again, but we've made that move stick. Now Red Bull obviously won the Drivers' Championship with Max last season. I think Red Bull might struggle this season. I don't know why. It's just a feeling. I could be totally wrong, but I think Mercedes are going to focus on next year a little earlier than Red Bull did, and Red Bull were desperate to get that championship. So I wouldn't be that surprised if Red Bull are a little further down, and if they are, I can see Max getting a bit frustrated. I don't know if we're going to see the best out of him if the car isn't at its best, but we'll have to wait and see. Some of Max's driving, if he's doing that while battling for 5th and 6th position, I'm not convinced it's going to be as good for him. Perez, on the other hand, just needs a solid season. He needs to be consistent. If he can go a little bit better than he did this year, that would be good, but we'll have to wait and see how he copes with the new cars as well. But that's pretty much it for Mercedes and Red Bull. I think Mercedes are going to be really strong, and I'm going to predict that Red Bull are going to drop a bit. I'm driving my Ferrari, chasing down the McLaren, so let's talk about those two teams next. And I think both of those two teams have really good positive forward momentum going on at the moment. Both had a great season 2021. Of course, with a big reg change, it could mean that one team does well, one team doesn't. We'll have to wait and see, but genuinely feel like these two are going to be challenging again towards the front next season. The driver lineups as well, I mean, Ricciardo, Norris, Leclerc and Sainz, there just isn't really a weak point. In fact, the top 4 teams at the moment, I would say all 8 drivers are phenomenal. You know, I'd say the weakest links of there, possibly Perez, possibly Danny Rick. Genuinely, the top 4 teams have really good pairings, and that is exciting moving forward in the sport. Ricciardo and Norris, obviously a bit topsy-turvy last season, But I think McLaren kind of stopped developing their car a little early because they did struggle towards the end. I wonder if that means they're putting more resources into the 2022 car. We'll have to wait and see, but I do expect Leclerc this season to get one back on Carlos Sainz and beat him in the driver's standings. I think with a better car, Leclerc will really thrive, whereas Sainz will continue to be a steady rock in that team. Getting ready for a pit stop. Will I go for a dive bomb? I think I'm too far back, but let's go for it anyway. Oh, I've hit Ricciardo. That was a total mess. I feel like I'm having a better race this time round than I did at Abu Dhabi for the 2021 review. I do want to talk about the midfield at the moment, because I don't know if they're going to be the midfield again next year. It was quite clear that Aston Martin, AlphaTauri and Alpine were right in the centre of things in 2021. However, in 2022, big reg change, again, who knows where they'll be. I do expect those teams to be round about the middle, but I'm sure one of them will surprise us, whether it's good or bad. I'm going to say if any team is going to do well out of those three, I'm going to predict it's Alpine. I feel like they've got a really good synergy at the moment. The drivers get on very well. There's clearly a good team spirit. And I feel like they're in a good position compared to when they were at Renault. Basically, in 2016, Renault took back over the team. This is probably the best position they've been in since then. So if they can keep that going, they should be sitting in a pretty position. Going to try and get past Ricciardo. Oh, this is close. Brake nice and late. I think I've got the move done. I love racing at Bahrain. It's going to be really exciting to see how the opening race shapes out. If the cars are close, that's what I really wish for. The other midfield team, Aston Martin, slightly more of an unknown quantity in my eyes because they've gone through a huge change in ownership and a big change in leadership as well, with Otmar leaving. So I think they're in a transitional period. Of course, they've got good backing and good money now, which they maybe didn't have when they were Force India or Racing Point, but they always punched above their weight when they were Force India, when they were Racing Point. I don't think they'll reach the heights like they did in 2020, but you know, we could see a decent year for them just with the new injection of cash, and they've obviously got really talented individuals within that team. So as long as they can steady the ship in terms of the leadership and the management, I think Aston Martin will be absolutely fine. I'm not expecting wonders from them, and I wouldn't be super surprised if they were a little bit off it at the start of the season. AlphaTauri, on the other hand, they are going to be my pick for the team from the midfield that's going to drop back. Now, there's no logic for this. My pit window's open, so I'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, I have no reason as for why AlphaTauri will drop, other than I think the other teams around them are more likely to be the ones that improve. And whenever a team improves in Formula 1, another team has to drop down the order because that's how it works. AlphaTauri, obviously, Honda are pulling out of the sport. They're keeping the same engines, but they're rebranded as Red Bull engines. Now, that might not mean anything. Nothing might change, but it could also unsettle a few things. Who knows what the car's going to be like. They've got a great driver in Pierre Gasly, and I also think they've got an improving driver in Yuki Tsunoda. So let's wait and see what they do, but I'm going to take a guess that AlphaTauri are going to drop back a little bit next season. Okay, we're coming out the pits, still ahead of Ricciardo. This is good. This race is going much better than the last one. I did just want to quickly touch on the drivers as well for those midfield teams. Now, I expect Tsunoda to be a little closer to Gasly this year, and hopefully he gets off to a better start, otherwise he is going to be in danger of losing his seat at the team for the year after. Oh, okay, tyres need heat. As for the other two teams, I don't think much will change. I think Ocon and Alonso are so closely matched. Alonso's just got that edge, but Ocon will be getting better every year, and Alonso maybe won't be. So I think they'll be closer together than ever next season, and it's hard to call which one will beat the other one, but I'm going to go with Alonso based on his experience with new regulations. And then we've got the, of course, Vettel and Stroll partnership at Aston Martin. Stroll will be hoping to close that gap a little bit to Vettel, but I really don't see it changing too much. It's kind of going to depend on the motivation levels of Seb, and that'll depend on how good the car is. We're now going to talk about the three teams that have, for the last few seasons, made up the bottom of the Formula 1 standings, and that, of course, is Williams, Alfa Romeo, and Haas. Now, I actually think that Haas might have the best car out of these three teams in the 2022 season. I just don't know if they've got the drivers to extract the performance out of it, if it is better. Now, we all know that Haas stopped developing their car very early on last year, but even if their car is slightly better and they're on the tail of the midfield, you know, Schumacher's probably the only one that's really going to be able to extract the most out of that car, and we still don't really know how good Mick is. He's often struggled when he, you know, with a new car, when he goes from one series to another, and of course with the new regs, that means there'll be a new car. However, he usually does really well in his second season in a particular series, and this will be his second season, so you could argue either way. That was a very close call with Norris into turn 1. As for Nikita Mazepin, well, if he is in a slightly faster car and he's a bit further up the grid, it's going to be interesting to see how his racecraft develops, because he showed flashes last year of aggression, and yeah, we know his history in terms of his defensive driving and stuff, and he obviously upset a few drivers last season, so he will really need to up his game if he is somewhere close to the midfield. And I also think he's going to need to prove himself pace-wise as well in a better car, but let's wait and see. Then you've got Williams, and Williams, I can see them having a slightly better year next year with the improved finances than they had in 2021. But I don't think they're going to shock anyone. I really don't think they're going to make a massive leap. Again, completely on a whim here because we haven't seen any of preseason testing. It's just gut feel. And, you know, Albon's a good driver. Is he quite as good as George Russell? I'm not convinced. Is he as good as Latifi? I think he probably is better than Latifi. But they're going to be very close. At the start of the season, while Alex gets used to the team, I could see Latifi really pushing him in for that top Williams seat. But second half of the season, I'm expecting Albon to push on. I'm really going to have to be careful here because Norris is all over the back of me. I don't want this race to go downhill in the second half because we're up in P6 at the moment. Then, of course, the one team remaining to talk about, Alfa Romeo. Complete switch in the driver lineup. So we've got Guanyu Zhou, who's obviously a rookie. I'm expecting him to be a similar kind of level to the likes of Latifi. So maybe there's not too much expectation on him. We'll have to wait and see. I think he's a mature guy, so he will need to just stay calm, learn, and just try and show flashes of pace as well. But I think the pressure's kind of off him a little bit. He's got Bottas as a teammate who's going to be very solid, if unspectacular. Let's wait and see with Guanyu Zhou. If I had to predict a team to finish at the bottom, I am going to say it's Alfa Romeo. Just because in previous seasons when they've been Sauber, they've sometimes struggled with reg changes and they've been towards the back. And I'm just not fully feeling the Alfa Romeo thing at the moment. I don't know if they've got the right momentum. For Bottas, it's going to be all about whether he can get his mojo back. You know, he clearly lost some confidence in that Mercedes seat. I think if the car's a midfield car, we might see Bottas regaining that confidence and mojo. If the Alfa Romeo's towards the back, he could get a little bit disheartened and struggle. It's going to be really interesting to see. We really need to see the strong personality of Bottas come out this season, because if he kind of shies away from it a little bit, he could get lost to the sport pretty quickly. So after this race is over, I'm going to give you guys 3 general predictions for things I think will happen this season, and also I will give you my predicted champions, and I'll also give you a full rundown of my drivers' standings between 1 and 20 of where every driver will finish in my opinion, and also the team standings. So based on what I've spoken about, I'm going to try and predict these things as closely as possible, and you guys can do the same watching the video. Leave your answers in the comments, and don't worry, we will revisit them at the end of the year and see how right or wrong we've all been. Here comes Norris. I'm going to defend to the inside. Oh, he's using all his battery power and DRS. Last of the late breakers. Avoid contact. Try and go around the outside. Yes. Kept it clean. He's now going to have DRS. No, I've got the DRS, so that's good. I can stay to the outside. Oh, I'm braking too late for that corner every time, especially with DRS. But I've hung on. Okay, we're within DRS range of Pierre Gasly for P5 now. Just going to get a little bit closer. I've got one more DRS straight towards the end of the lap. Through the left. Going to stay as close as possible. Oh, no, too much power. I've got the DRS, but I lost the back end. I'm going to just have to lunge it here. I'm going to have to go for it. Oh, going to run deep. Keep it together. Close to contact. Gasly's under pressure from Norris as well, but that might save me. I've looked in my mirror and not focused on where I'm going. Come on. Okay, we're good. We're good. Round the final corner, it's going to be P5 in the Bahrain Grand Prix. Pretty good for Ferrari. So according to the game, Red Bull and Max Verstappen are going to win the season opener, but that very much contradicts my predictions. So after all of that, it's time for me to give you my 3 general predictions for the 2022 season, as well as my drivers and teams champions. My first prediction is that I think Red Bull will have a frustrating season, and because of that, Max will really struggle to cope. I think the car won't be as quick as it was in 2021, and Max will have a few incidents fighting for the likes of 5th, 6th, maybe even worse. So that's going to be my first bold prediction. The second one is that I think Mick Schumacher will score a top 6 finish at some stage in the season. Not much more to add than that. I think the Haas will be quite good, and I think Mick is a talented driver. My third prediction is that I think George and Lewis will actually maintain a healthy relationship, with George happy to play second fiddle, but scoring 3 wins in a strong Mercedes. Now, that's my predictions and all of my ideas, but what about the rest of the TraxionGG team?
So my first prediction is that George Russell will get his first quote-unquote legit podium. Obviously, he got a P2 at Spa last year after an amazing qualifying performance, but the race was barely a race. It was, 2 laps, half point, etc. But it was still a podium I would argue he did deserve. I know that if the race had gone ahead, there was probably no way in hell he'd have stayed in P2. But, he managed to qualify ahead of Lewis Hamilton in a Williams. That's, props to him for doing that. So I think now he's going to be in a Mercedes this year. I think George Russell will get his first legit podium. Whether that's going to be a win, that would be quite incredible. First legit podium, but he's going to get a podium this year. I'm pretty certain of it. Next, Lando Norris will get his first win. He was so close in Sochi, and it was so painful to watch as a McLaren fan, but he's definitely got it in him to finally get that first win. And obviously he was very close at Monza, but teammate Danny Rick got it instead. Not that I'd expect Danny Rick to have let Lando past and given him the win. Danny Rick was going to take it, but he's definitely got the pace, and I really hope that he has a repeat of his first half of the 2021 season this year, because he was just absolutely smashing it, and I think he could indeed get his first win in 2022. Finally, I think Mick Schumacher will get the Haas into Q2 a couple of more times and be promoted from Haas after 2022. Now, the wider contractual stuff with the rest of the drivers, that very much leaves the latter half of this prediction up for debate, but that's a potential thing. But I definitely think with the fact that the Haas that's being used this year is actually, a car that's been worked on, unlike the one he drove last year, and the fact that he managed to get the Haas into Q2, once or twice over the course of last year, the fact that he did that in the Haas, giving him a brand new car that he said has been made for him, basically, I think he could get into Q2 a couple more times, and I'd really like to see that. And again, provided other driver contracts run out or whatever, I'd like to see him potentially move on from Haas into a better team after 2022. Drivers' champion for me in 2022, I've got a feeling that Lewis might take it. I know everyone said this last year, and obviously it didn't. Abu Dhabi stuff, let's not even talk about that, but I think after last year, I think Lewis is going to have a lot of adrenaline pumping through his veins. He really wants to take that 8th championship, and I think he probably will, and that also lends itself to Mercedes getting constructors again for the 9th season in a row. I've got a good feeling that their 2022 car is going to wipe the floor of everyone else. Not to say they won't have a fight, they will definitely have a fight alongside Red Bull, but I think it's going to be Mercedes taking constructors and Lewis Hamilton taking his 8th Drivers' Championship.
My first prediction is that Haas is going to be bought by Uralkali, so taking over their base in Banbury and removing the Haas name entirely. Mazepin has seemingly brought in a whole load of money towards the team, even if the negative PR has also tagged along, but Gene Haas does seem to become a bit impatient as years go on. You can see it in Drive to Survive, you can see it in Ted's Notebook over the years, and I just feel like he's kind of done with Formula 1 really, and probably the team as well. Second prediction is that we will see a team become disqualified within a race. I mean, we did have a disqualified Vettel at Hungary last year, but I feel as if one team will make a crucial mistake with both of their cars. Maybe they'll run in illegal mode, maybe both cars will use DRS illegally, but who knows. Lastly, and this is such an extremely bold prediction, but Hamilton will sign for Ferrari. Now, I know this is such a weird thing to say, but bear with me. See, Hamilton is nearing the end of his career, and he's become such a perfect fit with McLaren and Mercedes throughout his time in Formula 1. However, if you ask any random person on the street to name a single Formula 1 team, there is a very big chance that they'll say Ferrari. Their whole image is just pure Formula 1, and I feel as if Hamilton wants to cement his legacy within the sport by signing with them. So, for the standings, I reckon Mercedes and Hamilton will take it this year. He's looking to bounce back for his 8th, and I reckon he'll do it this year.
So my 3 predictions are, for the year ahead in Formula 1, Williams will score more points than Aston Martin. Not going to say if that's for the bottom or the top of the championship. They're just going to score more than Aston Martin, and it's going to be egg on the face of the Strolls. Fernando Alonso will win a race. Don't know if the Alpine's going to be any good or not. I'm just going to say he's going to win a race. And at least one team will be able to generate more downforce instead of less with the new rule set. And therefore, every other team will follow suit. And we end up with about the same amount as overtaking as we do anyway. And there's no real difference. How about that for skepticism? So then it comes to predicting the driver and constructor champions. And because I've backed myself into a corner and predicted that one team perhaps will find a loophole in the aerodynamic rules, I'm going to go out on a limb and just guess that it's going to be Ferrari. And if it's Ferrari, I'm going to say Charles Leclerc to win the Drivers' Championship. I'm a huge fan of Carlos Sainz Jr., but I think Charles, if Ferrari has a competitive car, will become the number 1 driver. Right, let's see how wrong I am in 12 months.
Okay, so that's everyone giving their general predictions. It'll be very interesting to see at the end of the season if any of us got those right or not. But just before we finish off, I'm going to give you my predictions for the final championship standings, both in the drivers and the team standings. So we're going to start with the drivers. Finishing in 20th, 19th and 18th respectively, I'm going to have Guanyu Zhou, Nikita Mazepin and Nicholas Latifi. I think the Alfa Romeo is going to be a slower car this year, so therefore Zhou is going to finish at the back, and I think Mazepin won't be able to extract any performance that the Haas might have. Latifi, again, it's hard to put him any higher when you look at who else is on the list. We've then got Bottas in P17. I think the Alfa Romeo, is, again, because it's not going to be a great car, he's going to be near the back, but I do think he'll score a point or two. Obviously, this is completely subjective because I don't even know how fast the cars are in pre-season testing. We've got Yuki Tsunoda in P15. Again, AlphaTauri are predicted to have a bit of a tough year, with Mick Schumacher finishing 15th in what I believe will be a slightly better Haas, and he will be able to extract more points out of it than his teammate Mazepin. 14th, 13th, 12th and 11th I've gone for Alex Albon, Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly and Sebastian Vettel. I think the Albon one speaks for itself. He'll finish just ahead of Latifi in the Williams. Then you've got Lance Stroll 13th in a kind of average Aston Martin, Pierre Gasly 12th in a slightly worse AlphaTauri, and Sebastian Vettel managing to get a few more points in his Aston Martin. We now move into the top 10, and I have Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso finishing 10th and 9th respectively. I think those two will be very closely matched once again, but Fernando will pip it. Sergio Perez I have down in 8th. It's probably my big surprise. I think the Red Bull will not be as competitive and Perez will struggle to get the most out of it. We've then got Daniel Ricciardo in 7th and Carlos Sainz in 6th, so that'll be the second drivers for me in the McLaren and the Ferrari. I just don't see them quite managing to break into that top 5 when you consider who we've got coming up. Another controversial one is next, Max Verstappen in 5th. If we're going with my narrative that the Red Bull isn't going to be as strong this year, then you have to say Max Verstappen is going to struggle. I did say he'd get frustrated as well, so I'm having him down to finish 5th in the standings. We've got the very impressive Lando Norris 4th for McLaren. I think he'll have another solid year where he consolidates on his performances in a, again, decent McLaren, maybe even better. I've gone with Charles Leclerc in P3 for Ferrari, and as I said earlier, I'm predicting that Ferrari will have a very good car this year. And then the front two, we have George Russell, of course, in P2, and Lewis Hamilton in P1, and I explained my thoughts behind that. I do think Mercedes will have the strongest car this year, so there is my predicted final driver standings. Based on that then, I'm going to share with you my final team standings, and I'm going to have Alfa Romeo finishing in 10th, with Haas finishing 9th, unable to capitalise on their car performance, AlphaTauri down in 8th with a slightly worse car, with Williams in 7th making steady progress, Aston Martin bang average again in 6th, with Alpine having another strong season in 5th position. Red Bull unfortunately are going to drop down to 4th, behind the resurgent McLaren, and even more resurgent Ferrari, who will finish 2nd, and then by a country mile out in front is going to be Mercedes-Benz. Okay, so there you have it. That is my predictions for the season, as well as some of the other members of the Traxion.GG team. Lots of predictions, and we are going to revisit them later on in the year, and we'll see just how incorrect all of us probably were. Maybe one of us is kind of right. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much as always for watching, and make sure of course you subscribe to the Traxion.GG channel to catch all of our future content. Hit the notification bell if you want to see the videos as they are released. But until I see you next time, keep it pinned. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy what is hopefully an incredible 2022 Formula 1 season. Goodbye.